How do you feel about doing those things? Does it make you feel really cool that, I mean, you're being involved in these people that are doing things in the industry, and you're being invited to be part of that? To me, it'd have a cool factor to it.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, these are people. I mean, when I started at MagnaFlow, I came in as a person wanting to work on the developmental side, my background being engineering and such. So I wanted to make product and really being in the industry, and then having the fortunate ability to, in my first year, immediately get thrust in front of a camera because I was comfortable about talking about the main ways and the things we do. And, I was learning how to fabricate and weld. So within that first year, I'm working with Chip Foose on building cars in the early 2000s when the show Overhauling was starting to debut. And
This interview episode is brought to you by Tyree Off-Road. Lights for people that need to get shit done. Visit tyreoffroad.com right now. That's TYRI offroad.com. Audio boys and girls, it's time for another Jeep Talk Show interview, and I'm excited about this interview. And everybody else, all prior guests are going, well, why weren't you excited about mine? I'll tell you why I'm excited, because I saw a YouTube video about putting in exhaust systems on Gladiators, and I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. I really like this. I contacted our interview acquisition guy and said, hey, we need to get MagnaFlow on because I want to talk to him about this. So they sent me you, Rich, and I believe you were the one doing the video. You probably do all the videos for MagnaFlow.
yeah,
so
around
Rich,
town. Yep, that's me.
yeah. So Rich is a lifelong audio enthusiast, and a general tinkerer of things. Love that. I think that's a lot of us. He spent the majority of his career in the automotive industry, just celebrating his 22nd year of working at MagnaFlow. I hate you. 22 years at one company. I hate you. That's amazing. I made it 16 years at the company before they got rid of my ass. It always seems to happen around company sales. They seem to do a turnover of people, no matter what kind of job that you did for them. So Rich has a background in engineering, starting in research and development side of business, migrated into sales training. Oh, was that hard for you to move into sales? Technical people generally do not like sales.
Well, it's weird because it is one and the same thing. When we in engineering have to make a product, it's based upon consumer feedback. So really what I'm being told and the data shows we are getting from the consumer side was what I'm going to build, but I'm having to regurgitate that need back as a sales feature. So I figure if you're doing things right and you're building products that people want anyways, you're going to find that really the developmental side has a lot to do with sales, because we're trying to satisfy that, well, I need an exhaust that does this. It has to have this functionality, this sound, this fitment. So really what I'm selling you is your idea back in different words in a way that we kind of arranged it. So if you really look at it, it goes hand in hand, and that's sort of why I've kind of been migrated back into the marketing world.
Yeah. So he migrated into sales training, marketing, and now in the role of corporate relations and spokesman. You may have seen him fabricating exhaust on overhauling or under a car, supporting a TV or YouTube builder. That's pretty cool. What is your, and I'm going to get you in trouble. What's your most famous YouTube builder that you've been done stuff with?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's guys with big
I'm sorry.
audiences.
Which was the one that was the biggest asshole that you want to say that person was horrible?
You know what's funny is I can't say that anybody that's ever invited me somewhere has not appreciated me first. So I've never had that negative experience.
Good. Well, you got to say that. I mean, that's the reason why I asked that. So that's really cool. Do you? How do you feel about doing those things? Does it make you feel really cool that, I mean, you're being involved in these people that are doing things in the industry, and you're being invited to be part of that? To me, it'd have a cool factor to it.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, these are people. I mean, when I started at MagnaFlow, I came in as a person wanting to work on the developmental side, my background being engineering and such. So I wanted to make product and really being in the industry, and then having the fortunate ability to, in my first year, immediately get thrust in front of a camera because I was comfortable about talking about the main ways and the things we do. And, I was learning how to fabricate and weld. So within that first year, I'm working with Chip Foose on building cars in the early 2000s when the show Overhauling was starting to debut. And when I was on that set, I'm around the best builders that were volunteers, the most qualified designers and such. And the people that I was surrounded with were the people that I was already fans of outside of
Yeah.
social media. So it was kind of cool to be able to now, as a peer, be a part of that situation rather than just an onlooker. So absolutely, cool factor was extremely high.
Yeah. Do you still get excited when you're involved in these things? I don't know if you still do these things or not. Do you still get excited about being part of the things, or is it like, I gotta go talk to, so and so, and I've been doing his show for a number of years now.
I mean, it's hard to say that you never get to have that first experience again, because it's absolutely true. The first time you get to meet the people that are the icons, the first opportunity you get is always going to be a one-time experience, and those are usually very memorable for me. Only because in my first few years of working with the company, it was Mario Andretti, Ivan Stewart, Chip Foose. These are the people that I'm fabricating parts for and are asking to represent the company I just started working for in their eyes. So an honor to be there, but also, car guy. It's like, that's Mario Andretti over there that I'm talking to off camera. And here's his ZR1 that Chevrolet gives him for all the different generations, and I'm going to be allowed to play with this thing. Yeah, pretty cool. That's obviously, composure on camera is one thing, but I have my giggle moments as soon as I get to stay off screen and really enjoy what it is. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ever the same as that first moment, but the fact I've had them for 2 decades with different people, ranging from back then television to now, guys with million people followings on YouTube. It's a pretty wild world that the range of people and accessibility people have to them now.
So I don't know that I suspect there is a difference, and this has nothing to do with what we were going to talk about, but I find it interesting. How has it changed from TV to the influencer, or the not TV? Because you have people that were TV personalities that are now doing streaming, YouTube, direct video to the masses. How has it changed as far as the feel between the two?
Well, the medium is the same. The difference is the frequency at which it's produced. And to our point earlier, it's the editing time and things. So when you had television was something that we had to sit down, minus TiVo. I'm going to date myself right now, where you had to wait for the show to broadcast. You kind of set aside time in your schedule. It was a revered thing, and therefore had a higher expectation of quality. And it had to be almost overproduced to become what we still see like in movies. It's kind of interesting that television and silver screen were kind of very similar in that aspect, that these were the upper echelons of communication. Now, today, what we see in digital media, social media, and these YouTube channels and people that are producing content on their own websites, it's more frequent. Therefore, the expectation of refinement is less. And to some degree, it's what people like. When you see the somewhat scripted and contrived background that happens, and I'm going to speak to just some car TV in the early years, it was reality TV is what we like to call it, but really reality TV was well planned. The editing crew could actually adjust messaging and things like that in post. Whereas today, more people want to have a conversation and be a part, or want to be that fly on the wall watching something as it's going through original inception. So the production is much less. I mean, I'll tell you, back when I first started, it was like on set, I would have somebody that was a PA that I could say, hey, you know what, for dinner, I would like this, by the way, these are the drinks I like. And they would do everything they could to kind of accommodate that. And then the production cost raises when you have 10 people on set doing those kinds of things. But then also the stakes are higher because they had to do advertorial content. So everything that was quote unquote reality TV, people were wearing certain branded hats, they were drinking certain sodas on camera. Those kinds of things were naturally part of it to fund it. But now that the cost of operation has gone way down, the editing costs have come down, the software and means has come down. You can have something that's more conversational. People are more willing to accept because it's more, I think the reality of real TV is that real TV isn't TV anymore. Real TV is, the kind of over the shoulder look of what's going on, and social media does a pretty good job. It's still got its, advertorial elements, but does a pretty good job of kind of making you feel like you're just part of an experience that someone's sharing.
Man, I wish I had a Coke can here or something so I could pull it up and do product placement for this interview. Yeah, I mean, I think it boils down to the expense, because the TV production stuff was an expense. I mean, you had a studio, you had cameras, you had scripts, you had, like you said, the PAs that were doing all kinds of things. 50,000 green M&Ms for the talent, please. Yeah. But now we have a studio. I remember that line from Back to the Future where Doc saw the video camera. He goes, "No wonder your president is an actor," because you had everything in the thing. And so it's interesting how it's gone. It's nice because it gives everybody a way of communicating with really the world. Yeah. And you never know. There's been so many gatekeepers in the process, so many middlemen that were keeping people that were very talented, perhaps like yourself, from being in front of the camera. So I find it really interesting that you came in as an engineer, but you felt comfortable in front of the TV, in front of the camera for TV. That's really cool, and I think that's relatively rare for highly technical people.
The only part that made that possible was the fact that there was this thing that automotive enthusiasts, we all understand, is, we're bench racers. We like to, talk a little crap on each other and, poke and prod. We've always had that communication forum. It's just that when it was a passion of mine, being a part of the industry and doing what I did for a brand, it was no longer work. Therefore, standing up and talking to a group of people that I would normally not engage because I wasn't, it was work, let's say. I'm now talking to people like you who are like, I love Jeeps. I want to go do Jeeping things. And these conversations aren't outside of what I would have with that person on a one-to-one. And I think that was what it was always presented to me as, is when I'm on this TV show, I'm not supposed to be selling anybody anything. I'm supposed to demonstrate how the product works. I'm supposed to interact with the other people around the build to kind of express what our passion was in developing this product. And then the selling happens after the fact. That's what our distributors do. That's what our sales team does. I'm there to show the passion that went into developing it, which I was a part of. So that became super easy because the medium went away from actors reading their lines about what's good and what's bad. To now being, hey, why do you like this product? So like when you saw that video of all the Gladiator exhausts, I don't have a script in front of me. I'm just talking off of hand what I know we put into it, watching what our team did, being a part of the testing program. So it's super easy to convey those things when it's experiential versus just an acting job. Okay.
Now, I didn't watch, and this is just bad on me. I watched the Gladiator video because I've got a Gladiator. I don't have a JL Wrangler or anything. So feel free to say, and you can do this on the JL as well. But for the Gladiator, you had 3 exhaust systems. One was a dual exhaust, and it was a pseudo dual. You talk about reality TV. That's not really reality. This dual exhaust really isn't a dual exhaust. It's hard to get a dual exhaust from a 6-cylinder. Well, it's not a straight 6. I guess you can. Anyway,
we'll talk about that. There's some reasoning behind it.
All right. And so actually, let's start with that one. We had an interesting conversation before we started recording about the dual exhaust, because I see that as an off-road Jeeper, and I haven't been off-road that often. There's a whole story behind that. It's not because I didn't want to. But I see those tips below the bumper as great crush items.
Yeah. And actually, we weld them on, so we don't do it because we realize that it's going to be future business, that whole built-in obsolescence. We do it because there's consumer demand for it. And I think this is the interesting part when we take something that is very personal to us, because we are an exhaust and performance company, and a lot of our people hear that way, but we always have to come back and take a step back and take ourselves out of the equation and look at data. So when we see the Gladiator, we think, as a Jeep person myself, as an off-roader and as a person in the aftermarket, I think the person who's doing this is going to take this thing and go rock crawling and be extreme with it.
Sure.
But when you look at the data, we have something we look at called vehicles in operation. We can actually pay for this data, and it tells us every vehicle purchased by what zip code it was purchased in. So we have an idea of who's using it by locality and the number of vehicles out there. When we start looking at Jeep Gladiator owners, one, It seems like those are the features you see on YouTube and whatnot because they're cool looking trucks, but they are the minority of sales. When you compare the Gladiator to the JL platform, the number of Gladiators sold is a minority by far. The weird part is that the number of people that modify them is pretty high. So even though it's a small percentage of total Jeeps sold, the number of people that do buy Gladiators to modify them is higher. And I think a lot of
That's
it has to be
interesting.
yeah. But look at what you did. I guarantee you've done bigger wheels and tires, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one first thing that we see with Gladiator, and is that truck is so big, and the tires from factory are
Oh,
just so
good
small.
Lord. Yes. It looks like a shopping cart.
Yeah, so that's one of the first things that happens, and more so, there's guys running around on stock Jeep, Rubicon wheels and tires going up and down the Rubicon. It was designed to
Sure.
do that. Shorter wheelbase, good angle of approach and departure. But with the Gladiator, it kind of compels you to at least make the lift, the larger tire, and the wheel combination is almost a standard. And we see a lot more people than JL percentage that are modifying them by ratio of owners to actual vehicles out there percentage wise. So it's a different customer. And to that point, the dual is an aesthetic thing. And to comment a little bit on why it's considered a dual, there are emissions things that we have to worry about, both EPA. We're also a catalytic converter manufacturer, so we're subject to that information and knowing that. But the EPA has limitations on the reconfiguring of a vehicle, because changing a single exhaust that goes into a Y pipe versus one that has a true dual from factory, when you make those volumetric changes, you're actually going to affect the vehicle's emissions by changing back pressure, location of cats. The monitoring system is going to be different because the O2 positioning is going to be different. So in that context, we have to go from a dual to a single, from a single back to a dual, but we're doing so to the point of being an aesthetic. And I think that's something that we found with the Gladiators. There's a lot of people who may not be going and doing the Rubicon with them, but they want them to look like they can. And
Right.
sometimes that dual exhaust out the back just helps fill in that space the same way the big wheel and tire does. It makes the back of the vehicle feel a little more complete.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you guys aren't the only people that have done this. I remember way back in the early 80s, I had a Chevy pickup, four-wheel drive Chevy pickup, and it had a dual exhaust, which was, it was, the two tubes into one tube and then out the back, and they kind of split it, and it was just the thing on the end. So it's all about savings and stuff. So you mentioned back pressure, and actually I wanted to talk about that because I think a lot of people don't take this into consideration. One of the things that I think I had a 2-inch or 3-inch exhaust put on my Nova with a 327 because I wanted to get more air out the back, more exhaust, because a internal combustion engine is just an air pump. Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't understand that if they do things up front, you got to do things out back. Otherwise, you're not getting the performance that you're adding to the engine. So is there a point at which you can have too much airflow, too much exhaust flow, and you don't get the proper back pressure?
So this is a careful place to kind of look into, because there is no right answer for, do you need back pressure? Because it has everything to do with, to your point, the engine that you're using. So today, emissions controlled, computer controlled, O2 sensor monitored, capable of closed loop and open loop operation vehicle is going to be able to compensate for differences. So inside of that, we want to optimize, to your point, engine efficiency. So looking at Jeep, you have a variable timing camshaft that's able to increase airflow on the intake. Having less behind that it has to push through is always going to be a benefit. Are you ever going to be able to, behind the catalytic converter, in the catback portion of it, create a point where you're going to have too little back pressure and not have the computer drive correctly? That's probably a no, minus cutting off the exhaust behind the cat and immediately having a pressure drop. But to your point of the Nova, you're talking now a carbureted vehicle that has a very specific tune. You've got your primaries, your secondaries, your air fuel is tuned, and it's incapable of adjusting spark timing beyond the curve you set up in your HEI or in your points and condenser if it happens to be a more stock configuration. But
Yeah,
those
you just got out
curves,
there on the road and accelerated, and oh, wait a minute, and then you had the distributor a little loose, so you could adjust it. That's the variable. That was the variable timing.
right, and it was not continuous, and it was not self-monitoring. So
Right.
if you tuned a vehicle to be rich run or lean run, depending upon those conditions, you got to think too, volumetrically speaking, unburnt fuel is still mass that's traveling down the exhaust. It slows down the gas speed. So we want efficient, but you're really tuning on a very, very narrow plane to optimize. And you can have too big and too small, especially because there's no catalytic converter. And that's the big thing that I'm talking about is the big changes. The catalytic converter is usually your biggest restrictor in the system. But in most modern systems, it is calculated in and does not have a detriment where go back to the 1980s. I mean, K5 Blazer with a 350 small block in it had the same cat in it as a big block Chevy. You have a 454, 396 in that thing, and it's pumping out an additional,
Wow.
100 cubes, and it had the same cat. That cat was in fact going to be restrictive.
Yes.
And the back pressure change would actually cause a difference in air fuel ratio. So by allowing the gases to flow more freely out the back, you get better expulsion. So we're talking four-stroke motor, you're pumping up that piston, and it's got a restrictor. That cat's pushing, not allowing the gas to come back, high back pressure. And when you have lowered that back pressure by getting a high flow monolith cat like the modern ones are, basically that air pressure out the back means you're not resisting that piston movement upwards. So you're going to gain airflow, but that also means your mixture is going to run lean. So now you've got to retune for the better flowing exhaust, to your point earlier. What comes in and what comes out is directly related. And generally speaking, if you can make either one benefit more pump efficiency, so lessen the restriction behind the piston on the exhaust stroke, or make the intake more efficient by having a better camshaft, by changing valve timing, by changing the intake or the carburation, all of those things are going to contribute to requiring more pumping efficiency, which means higher flow intake and exhaust.
So you said something earlier that I didn't think about before. Your systems are catback systems. So
yes, correct. Yeah.
Literally from the catalytic converter back is what your systems are. So you're saying that has a limited amount of changing the performance of the stuff that's up front. And that's good, because if you're concerned about hurting performance or causing issues, a catback system should not do that.
Correct.
It's limited in what it can do.
Right. And that's something that we actually take in consideration. It's probably one of the bigger topics that we do address inside of our engineering team. It's not just about taking stock and adding less restriction, because then you start introducing bad harmonics, vibration, drone, other things. And those are the audible problems. But secondary to that, we're also talking about working with emissions control devices. By, again, changing the back pressure, you're going to increase the airflow. And those O2 sensors are designed around reading airflow based upon a static number, which is stock. So if you've gone to a higher flowing exhaust system or too high a flowing exhaust system, you may cause a rear O2 sensor to read incorrectly. You can get check engine lights. You can change the what they call long-term fuel trimming. A lot of the new computer control vehicles, the rear O2 sensor, and a lot of Dodges and the Mopar world, they actually are what's used to determine what's going on with the vehicle to adjust your long-term fuel trim. So your short-term is what the front O2 sensor says, hey, this pulse, we got a little less dense air, so it's a little leaner. We can lean out the pulse to the injector for the next run. But then it goes, oh, it's too lean on this pass, so then it goes back up to running slightly rich. And it's doing this constant back and forth.
Right.
Then the rear O2 sensor is the normalization sensor. So it looks at that signal and goes, okay, what's the trend over the last 5 cycles, 10 cycles, 100 cycles? And it starts saying, hey, this car's running 5% rich or 5% lean, and it starts adjusting. Now, if we've changed the volume of that tube and we've made it more restrictive or less restrictive and changed the dynamics of airflow, that computer is getting wrong information. So our engineering team, we mimic OEM conditions where sensors are involved, and we look at enhancing to the limit of the capacity of the computer. So that variable closed loop, when it's monitoring the O2 sensors, we want to make sure that the changes we make don't ever go to the extremes, so we cause a additional check engine or other kind of non-run condition.
Right. So it really sounds like to me it's a pretty difficult situation coming up with a aftermarket exhaust system because you have a lot of variables that you have to take into account. But it begs the question, at least in my mind, why would you want to change it? Why would you want to risk the check engine light or a bad change in performance? Why would it? Now with the Rock Crawler series that we haven't gotten to yet, it makes sense to me because you're getting the exhaust system, which I think is crazy. You talk about small tires on a Gladiator, that exhaust system hanging down like it does in the back, which I think is a resonator in the back. It's not.
They tried to paint it black to hide it because it's so big.
Exactly. So, but why would you want to change the exhaust system? I mean, as a gearhead, it's like, oh yeah, let's get some exhaust system on there. Let's make it sound cool. Let's do the dual tip type thing because it'll look cool. But really, ultimately, performance wise, or is it a performance modification?
So what we look at in all the products that we build, that we need to increase performance. We want to generally change the aesthetic, and it has to fit and sound good. So if we can't make all those mantras kind of come together, we don't make an exhaust. So when you see in our catalog, there's a hole in coverage. Like I'll use an example here of something that's not Jeep, but the Altimas and Nissan went with these CVT transmissions. And while we can make great power by increasing exhaust efficiency, if you've ever heard of CVT, they have a constant RPM operation. So the engine goes to peak torque and horsepower based upon demand, and it sits there. And then these cones go in and out to change the gear ratio.
Oh, okay. Neat. Yeah.
And so you get the sound that just goes brrr. And the gear ratio is changing, but the RPM is not. And it is horrible sounding. There's nothing we can do to make that sound good. And that's something that we want to do and offer. So when we don't offer things, there's usually some reason. And don't get me wrong, there are some cars out there that we have a tough time offering a product for because the OEMs have optimized exhaust performance. And that's something that has come about more in the last 5 to 10 years as it has been in the history. Almost always there was horsepower in the bag because they would sacrifice fitment. You've seen crushed tubing to get around stuff. You've seen unequal length parts under the bottom because they had to get around another device in the back. Exhaust was an afterthought. Today, cars are so well put together that it is integrated, which is all the more reason why we have to spend the extra time to make sure that we get performance. And that's something we do say about all of our performance exhausts: you will increase performance. And number two, we also have to be very cognizant of the fact that this is an aesthetic thing. Hence, we do the black tip dual under the bumper because that is something somebody wants to see. But if we can't make power and make it good looking, then we just don't make it.
I like that. That's great. And I can imagine that makes things quite difficult and maybe frustrating whenever everything's looking good, but this one's not so good and you have to rework the whole thing. So,
yeah. And that's the reason why I think we are where we are as a company, is that we're not just looking at sales on the idea and concept. We're spending extra time to make sure that what we offer does have a benefit. And to your point of what's the expectation? Well, we're talking about a 3.6 liter, and I'm going to be very honest, minivan motor.
Sure.
It's now in a heavy vehicle that has the desire for good torque, insofar that when you look at that same motor that they put into, I forget what to call them, Pacificas and the town and countries, they don't have the same exhaust work. If you go under that truck, you're going to find it's got a balance tube. It's called the exhaust loop on the one side. And that's to compensate for the fact that the other side has to cross over because they both exit on the one side of the vehicle. So in order to make them equal length, to get the proper amount of torque balance and make that Y pipe work as a scavenger, those pulses always have to alternate as they come through. So Jeep actually designed a loop on one side.
I think I saw that. I thought that was strange.
And that balances the pressure pipe as it comes through when they combine from the two sides to the Y, so that we can get the scavenging effect timed correctly to get the most out of the exhaust. And that's something that was uniquely done because of the configuration and to make the car drive correctly. And those are the kinds of things that we need to put into play, that the OEMs already put into play, and we need to keep in consideration in the development of what we're building. So performance, premier, sound, and fitment. And then to your point, there are special fitments based on utility of vehicle.
So you mentioned the 3.6 and certainly not a V8, doesn't put a lot of horsepower or a lot of torque. So does putting a MagnaFlow exhaust system improve that?
So yes, what we are looking at doing is we take that little bit of back pressure that is in the factory system that is created to silence the exhaust. And you've driven your truck, you know what it sounds like stock. It was a washing machine. It hums. It doesn't make any noise. We know that the aftermarket performance consumer is willing to hear a little bit more for a couple of reasons. One, it's feedback. When we're out there crawling, we don't want to be looking down at the tachometer to understand what RPM we're at. The audible feedback is going to give you better presence on the vehicle and understand what's going on. When you're having tire slippage, you're going to hear the RPM come up. You're going to be able to be more cognizant of what happens. So that sound is something that is kind of expected by the performance enthusiast. So when we don't have to quiet the vehicle down nearly as much as the OEM, that leaves something on the table for better airflow. The easiest way to create a more quiet exhaust system is to be highly restrictive. So we can mitigate some of the restriction, like you will not see that rear resonator in our systems because we want the extra sound that resonator kind of mitigates.
Okay, good. And you forgot one of the most important things of getting good exhaust sound. It's so that you can put it in neutral or push in the clutch and rev the engine when there's a cute girl there walking by.
Yeah, we all love a little bit of the adrenaline push that we get from hearing the horsepower. And it doesn't matter. And you know what? That's the thing that I always look at. We got guys that are building, 4-cylinder cars that turbocharged, non-turbocharged, that want a performance tone to it. And really, if you really get down to brass tacks, the thing about exhaust is it brings a more visceral experience. It brings an auditory component to the performance that, I mean, what good is a 1071 blower, 1471 blower on a V8 if it's silent? If you can't hear the blower whine, if you can't hear the lump and thump of that thing at full throttle, having the horsepower alone isn't enough. We want to smoke some tires so you can see it, and we want to hear it. And those elements, I think, are part of that culture that is the enthusiast, is that it's sort of completes the experience of being a high performance vehicle when we can get feedback that's not just something you have to tell somebody, you can show them.
Mm-hmm. And I think in 20 or 30 years, perhaps sooner, but I think it's going to be a while, the kids aren't going to understand. They're going to have near infinite horsepower and torque with the electric vehicles, but no sound. It will be just a very vanilla experience. It'll go fast. I mean, it'll get you killed really a lot faster than what we have now. But man, the smell, the bass, all that stuff that you get from a throaty V8 is just amazing.
Yeah, and it's, they are growing up in the video game world. Don't get me wrong, I'm a gamer as well, and I love the simulator stuff. But simulators can get your brain to understand the real world better and quicker. But what they lack is the inputs. Yes, you can get, a G-force or kind of motion simulator. It's still not the same. No. The auditory feedback, it's funny. We talk about things on when people get motion sickness, it's about seeing something moving to equate to your body moving. So now your body can normalize and not feel motion sickness. Hence, you put that person next to a window when they get sick easy. Well, the same thing happens with auditory. Have you ever noticed that when you're driving your vehicle and you're about ready to have it shift to change gear, whether it's an automatic or do it yourself, you move a lot less as the driver than the passenger that's sitting with you? If you pay attention to that, it's because you're getting feedback. You're building an anticipatory response in your body without your inputs. Like, oh, when I start to hear the RPM climb up and I start to feel the power pull back and I don't feel those G-forces, I'm getting ready for a shift, so I'm stiffening up the muscles to resist that. Sure. And then you watch your passenger do this because they didn't have the same inputs and they didn't have the expectation created. And that's something that we find you can't simulate. We've seen at even SEMA the last few years, these companies putting speakers on the back of electric cars to try to emulate something. And how do you emulate a gear change? You're in one speed the whole time. You tap the
brakes. You have the computer tap the brakes for you to simulate the gear change.
Well, actually, I don't know if you've seen what Hyundai has offered, but their new vehicle has simulated gear shifts where it makes the noise and plays it back inside. And in their hybrid, it's actually still driving through the same gear ratio, but it's creating a motion by pulling timing to reduce power to simulate a gear shift.
Amazing. That's really cool.
It's going to be only a simulation of what it is, the reality of the internal combustion motor is. And I think it's going to be a really hard sale to say pure electric will be, I mean, ultimately performance wise, it can be the ultimate, but it's just the same way, there are analog things that we appreciate because we are analog creatures, in that sense that our experiences are still physical, and what we have is a desire to recreate those things. And like I said, a video game is a close approximation, but it's not the same.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I'm eating healthy bacon that's good for me, it's just not going to be the same experience.
Turkey bacon, it's all right, but it's not the same.
Yeah, you got to risk death. So, by the way, this is an old joke of mine. Did you know that when you go to heaven, everything in heaven is made out of bacon? So you can just grab it and eat it. It's just right there. But hell is the same thing, except it's turkey bacon. All right, so let me ask you about this. You mentioned SEMA a couple of times. I know SEMA is doing a push to try to help keep us to have the ability to work on our vehicles and make modifications. This has to be a concern for MagnaFlow because you guys, you mentioned the EPA and how that can change the emissions. I'm not going to say those bastards, but anyway, so how concerned, how much problems have you had? I think that it's actually getting better, but you don't know in 4 years if it's going to rear its ugly head again. How concerned is MagnaFlow about selling the product?
Not really, only because legislation is, without getting too political, is a pendulum. You're always going to see highly conservative and then moving down to conservative being emissions related, and then a laxing of that. And there's always something in the middle, and that pendulum just keeps swinging back and forth. When we got into the 1970s and we had the Clean Air Act passed, they were like, wait a minute, you're telling me that I got to put this cork on the back of my exhaust? And I mean, it took a while, but think about it. In the 1980s, a Corvette was making 220 horsepower.
That's amazing.
And that was the same 5.7 liter motor, but it was strapped down by early emissions technology. Now, today, a 5.7 is capable of well over 500 horsepower and doing so at 100 times cleaner. And I'm not exaggerating. If you live like I'm out here in the West Coast, and I grew up with orange alerts, and I couldn't go out and have PE because we could see the orange cloud above LA. That was a byproduct of having leaded fuel and a unmonitored emissions component. So there are tremendous benefits to that, but the technology has evolved today that, we do have variable valve timing, we do have 10-speed gearboxes, and we have the other controls within our understanding of emissions to take a Hellcat Red Eye 700 plus horsepower that's called an LEV, a low emissions vehicle. I mean, those seem like oxymorons of the past, but supporting 800 horsepower in a catalyzed vehicle is an everyday occurrence when you look at like Porsche, Lamborghini, Ferrari, all of these hypercars. They still are emissions compliant. But I mean, the fact that you can buy a US production vehicle in a Charger, or I should say used to be Charger or Challenger platform, and have a 700 horsepower street legal car, or even 1,000 horsepower now, with the ZR1 Corvette being just over 1,060 horsepower. That's an emissions legal car that's putting out so few emissions that its monitoring systems are entirely different than you would expect. They are not impeding to the performance of the vehicle.
That's interesting to hear. Do you, and the thing is talking about orange clouds, is there any state, California is what I'm referring to, where you cannot sell your product?
So everything we build in the performance side that you're looking at, so all the different systems we offer as catbacks, we are all 50 state compliant. So that's the biggest thing we build into it, is you do not have to worry if you're buying a MagnaFlow product for an emissions controlled vehicle. Everything we sell will provide you the MagnaFlow experience with no detriment to computer controls and with no detriment to your emissions compliance.
Perfect. Because I know, I'm sure some people would be really concerned about that. Now, I mentioned, I think before we got started, I had an 83 four-wheel drive Chevy pickup truck. Mm-hmm. And of course, being in my 20s, I had to modify the exhaust system and make it sound better. And it was fun, except when I went on a long trip. And that constant drone, I mean, I had that drone in my head for hours afterwards. now, how is the sound, and what kind of things do you do, or are you concerned at MagnaFlow as far as that drone that can really be detrimental over a long period of time? And I don't think it injured me. It was just frustrating.
You'd be surprised if you take a hearing test today how much I've lost from the world of drag racing and things I thought weren't too loud. They do have a cumulative effect, unfortunately. But it's interesting you had kind of brought up all the topics you did, because we talked about style with the dual, and we offer our Street Series duals with the Gladiator. We talked about the ground clearance and kind of changing some stuff with like the rock crawler. And really, this is the last and most recent development inside of our product line. Was we've watched the off-roader mature in the sense that, okay, we do want a little performance kick, but I want to drive this thing to a trail that's 300 miles away, and then I'm going to be in it with a friend, a wife, a dog,
my
a child.
kids, yeah,
and they're going to complain or not be comfortable. You may have become accustomed to louder exhaust, but why sacrifice that? And that's something we did in our Overland Series. Is we created a muffler that was capable of providing a nice kind of performance tone that didn't sacrifice drivability. And by doing that, we had to introduce all of our NDT, which is our no drone technologies. And we've developed a Helmholtz resonator, which we call our NDT resonator. And it's actually tunable. In other words, we give you a couple of settings because people's tolerance of that additional sound that hits your ear and gives you the fatigue is different from people to people. Just like people are colorblind, people are sensitive to certain music. You listen to them, that's too much bass, it's too high frequency. They gave us graphic equalizers to always compensate that for our stereo systems. And that's effectively what we've done. Is we've given you a cancellation device in the box in our Overland Series that allows you to tune out that unwanted drone, but still have a full performance exhaust sound.
Please tell me it's Bluetooth and you do it everything from your phone.
I wish, but it is only a 15 millimeter that typically requires you to change out the different settings. And it's a very interesting setup because we made it external of the muffler. So you're not pulling apart the whole exhaust. 15 millimeter crawling under the car, and you can adjust the length of the tube. That part is called a quarter wave resonator. So when you have a dead end pipe that's interjected into the exhaust system, but not in its primary flow, the length of that pipe is the same as like a trombone. You can adjust the length of the trombone to get a different note. And what we're trying to do is because it's a dead end pipe, trying to recreate the sound we don't want, and we're reflecting it back at itself. And that's how you get what they call passive noise cancellation. It's effectively the free version of what Bose and companies that have active noise cancellation do. They have a microphone that's listening to certain frequencies, and when those undesirable frequencies increase, it sends an inverse of that sine wave to collide perfectly to cancel it out completely. You get very good total reduction in sound when you're using a microphone and a speaker to reproduce it. We are using passive energy, and whatever that pressure wave has and what we tune it for, it's coming back at itself, but it's going to come down at a lower amplitude because it's bouncing around, reflecting before it hits itself. And it's not a pure conversion. We don't get a microphone's accuracy in the pressure wave. We're making an estimation based upon the length of the tubing. And as such, you can kind of tune out the sounds you don't want at a certain level, longer being the lower frequencies. Longer being the higher frequencies and shorter being the lower frequencies. We can kind of do what we want to do to get the sound in the cabin under control.
Mm-hmm. I would assume that when you're doing the adjustment, you kind of if it's a highway noise, that's generally the long term aspect of it. You got to do the adjustment, which you guys probably give some ideas of where to start, where places are to have it. You have to adjust it and take it out on the highway and see if it's the right adjustment for you.
The frequencies that people don't like are pretty much in a short range. We understand that what we have to mitigate is somewhere in this 100 hertz down to 100 hertz up to like 240 hertz is the primary. But It really depends upon the vehicle because that's the emanated sound, but it's got to go through your floorboards, your carpet. A lot of OEMs have countermeasures such as dampening material to make certain frequencies go away. So for every vehicle, and of course, as you change it, it's going to change that as well. So
exactly. That's going to be so frustrating, especially when you get calls from the consumer on the customer support line and you go, the questions that you would have to ask to find out why is this doing something's different about your vehicle.
But that's the thing that we've tried to make easy is don't do the math. we've given you 3 extension pipes, 3 variations in the box that we think are most common. But you can, like the trombone, just cut an inch away until you hear it go away. And there's no monitoring equipment. Your ear is what you're going to hear. So what we tell you is the unwanted frequency might be different from me to you. So when we give you those options in the box, it is completely customizable. So we just tell you cutting more will change to a lower frequency. And these days, you've got your phone here. They've got apps that can tell you the exact frequency that you're listening to. And if you see spikes, you can kind of get at least an affirmation, because what they say, measure twice, cut once. Same thing. It's like if you think it's a lower frequency but aren't sure, you can pop in these EQ apps, turn on the microphone, and see where the changes are. And you can actually sample, go down the highway, sample again, and see a difference. I mean, that's the great part about the technology and the availability of apps today, is you can actually go to that level. But for the most part, most people get it. They start at one spot and they just start reducing the length to get rid of the lower frequency until their ear doesn't vibrate and they feel good with their car.
And what exhaust system was this again that you said, Overlanding Series?
So we have the Overland Series, which is sort of like a rock crawler. It's got the high clearance rear tailpipe, so everything sits at above the body level and above the frame and bumper. Then the Rock Crawler Series is that without that noise mitigation. It's kind of our rowdier exhaust, you'd call it. So it's got a smaller muffler that's going to have a little bit more feedback. We typically find that the person who's going to be using the vehicle is a dedicated rock crawler maximum clearance. It's a weekend car. They're not driving it every day. And if they want the clearance, but they drive it every day, go to the Overland Series, which gives you the comfort that a person who's going to spend a lot more time in the vehicle driving would want. And then, of course, our Street Series has a nice performance note, but the dual exhaust. And we had that in 2 options. Actually, there was 4 kits we offer. I forgot about that. We have a single exit that turns out with an oval tip, and then we have the dual exit that comes out the bumper. So we do have a more traditional single exhaust that is the same sound as the dual, just has a different exit location.
So on my 2021 Gladiator, I recently installed a skid system, a full underbelly skid system, before going to EJS last year, and it was great. But while I'm under there, I'm going, well, this is all really, really nice. It's protected, very well, certainly in the midsection, but from front to back. I like that the fuel tank has dual skids now. But I'm looking at that exhaust system, and I'm going, holy crap, there's some really low-hanging part of the exhaust system. Much of it is fine, but towards the back, and that, of course, the departure angle is what's going to kill you on that. Yeah. And I don't think that crushing your exhaust is going to keep you from driving around, but you're going to be turning some heads with some negative noise, that noise as you're accelerating. And I think it's just silly that if you're making these modifications to your Jeep and you are taking it off road, man, make the change before you have to go, oh, man, I should have replaced that exhaust system.
Well, and also keep in consideration that the lowest hanging part is going to also be the first part to hit your tub and body panels. So first point to address, belly pans. We share some information with a couple of companies that make belly pans. So we know we have good fitment. For example, Artec Industries, I'm running their skid plate system on my JLU. We ran it on our 392. One of our employees has a Gladiator, and we have zero fitment. So we like to overlay some of our partner brands out there that make good products, and we share data to make sure that they don't have something that's going to interfere. Or if we do see something that's going to interfere, sometimes they offer, for example, our 392 kit, Artec offers a muffler skid that's made to fit our muffler, which is different than stock. It's actually higher profile, but you can't get rid of the rear muffler on the 392 if you still want to be able to go into that sport mode and be able to have the quiet mode. So to that point, everything that we do is compared to stock data, but we also try to overlay as much as we can in the aftermarket, and you'll find that data we actually keep on board with some of our Techline people. So in that sense, you bought a particular system, you can call them up and say, hey, did you guys also do a fitment on? And they can say, metal cloak belly pan. You can say a Artec belly pan, and they can say, yes, we've fitted this. Here's pictures. And we try to keep that information available as well.
That's great. That's going above and beyond. I mean, I understand that you pretty much have to, but I could also see that's not our stuff. That's your problem. You put that on there. You figure it out. So it's great that you guys do that. The thing that impresses me the most is I can tell that MagnaFlow has gone the extra mile to do things that many of us wouldn't even think about. I mean, especially adjusting a tube to take out the drone noise. So, and I think you've already answered this indirectly. So, the Rock Crawler series may not be the best exhaust system if you want to have a comfortable ride driving 19 hours to Moab.
Correct. And that's really where all of this came from is the overland experience. I mean, it's really an Australian thing that kind of migrated here as far as the lifestyle. But the reality is during COVID, more people got out in cars and enjoyed what was nature because it was the only thing we could do.
Right.
And they got out in their, high performance vehicles and off-road vehicles at that. But we also drove them there. It wasn't like, you get your guy that's a rock bouncer, rock crawler. He's got his weekender. It's on a trailer behind his motorhome. That's not the vast majority. The vast majority, it's their dual purpose car. And we had to come up with something that gave them the confidence that they're not going to smash a body panel or crush their exhaust system because they hit a rock, but also have the comfort of getting there. And one of the big things we found too in the overland world, we call it overloading. People like a lot of gear. I mean, we're in the world today where you can buy anything and everything for a Jeep. The Jeep has the biggest support for aftermarket products. If you want a rooftop tent, you want to do a trailer, you want to put on whatever gear, from portable showers to, whatever is going to make you comfortable, it's available. But all of that comes at an expense of one, price, but two, really, it's your suspension is designed around carrying a certain amount of weight. That engine and the gear ratio selected are around moving that weight. So when you put a lot of weight in it, what happens to engine load? It goes up. The RPM that you're driving at goes up, even though you're at the same speed. You change a wheel and tire, you don't change gear ratios, don't do the rear end, and you're going to find that the drone frequency and the drone RPM is going to change based upon your particular building of the vehicle. And that's really why we couldn't make a product that's just one size fits all. We had to have something that had adjustability.
Yeah, that is really cool. All right, so we're running a little long. I apologize, but this is so interesting, and I think it's interesting for our audience. A lot of really good information here. You could tell that you've been doing this for a long time. Okay, so we said that there was just a fraction of the Jeep owners that actually take their vehicles off road. Right. So I would imagine there's even a much smaller fraction of people that do Hemi swaps or change their motors. Sure. But you certainly have to change the exhaust system whenever you change when you do the heart transplant of the vehicle. Yep. Do you guys have systems for people that do the Hemi swaps? That I mean, is it just the 392 exhaust system, or is there something more specific?
Well, the 392 exhaust system assumes that you're putting cats on and everything else in the same fashion, so it would not apply. There's actually some aspects of the engine compartment that are different, like you have to limit up travel because it hits the oil pan. So there's different factors that go into that engine swap based upon whose engine swap. We have a lot of partners out there. So when you want to go to the extreme, one of the biggest builders that we partnered with is America's Most Wanted 4x4, which, you can go buy a Demon supercharged Gladiator from them that is, an emissions legal compliant 49, or I call it federal car. It's not available in California yet, but that vehicle is catalyzed, has a dual exhaust, has our single setup, and that is purchasable directly through them. We don't sell that. We sell components that you can use, and our custom builder kits are designed around you designing your own system and putting it together. But we do try to partner with those that are making it possible. And I will say making it possible because a Hemi swap into a late model from a computer integrations component and getting your BCM to work and all the different features. I mean, you can't even operate your lockers unless you override the computer. So nonetheless, if you're going to engine swap it, the computer is completely different because it wasn't intended to be in a Gladiator or a Jeep, or I should say a non-392 JL. And it needs to know what's going on because the BCM, when you go to look at your app screen, if you're in a late model JL, you're there adjusting features with direct feedback from the computer. And if it doesn't see something in the computer, it's not going to work. You can't engage your lockers under low gear. And there's other devices that you're going to have to put into place. So we do support the people who've kind of made it an easy pathway. It's not inexpensive, but between America's Most Wanted 4x4, Bruiser, they use our products in a way that their motor mounts and their pieces are set up to use an exclusive kit that they sell. So that's something that we help develop, but it's not something that we are directly selling through our means because the quantity is even lower, like you said. So can we provide advice when you get to our tech line? Sometimes I'm the guy that's going to answer. If you tell me that you've got a Demon 170 motor that's, making 1,000 horsepower that you're trying to shove into a Jeep, I'll provide you with some guidance. And that's not going to be one of our typical tech line guys. That's just outside of the scope of what they need to do. But being the custom builder that has to work with these vehicles, on the TV shows and on the things that happen inside the social media world, I've got a lot of experience on kind of what to expect sound-wise. Sure. And moreover, too, the biggest thing these days is emissions.
So the thing that strikes me is that when people go, especially if you're 17, you don't have any money, but you want more horsepower, and you drop a 327 in your Nova, the last thing you think about is exhaust expense. I mean, you got to buy the headers. Absolutely, you got to have headers. I bought a couple of, I think it was $25 glass packs and shoved them in the collectors. I didn't even bolt them down. And every so often one would fall out and I'd have to go collect it. It was hot, and just put it back in the header. So, but having a good exhaust system is really very important. It's the sound, the quality, the horsepower that's made. And I was really impressed that you guys, that one video that I watched, that you guys have multiple solutions for one vehicle. And it's not just Jeeps. You guys do a whole wide range of exhaust systems, correct?
You name it. I mean, from Corvettes to 1980s, Alfa Romeos, all the way through the, early 30s and 40s cars that we have, kits for muscle car stuff that we did throughout all the Overland Series, pickup trucks, you name it. We try to cover everything that we feel that the consumers are aware of. And that's, we take a lot of feedback. Our development team is about making products that people have asked for improvements from other people on, or have come to us and straight up said, hey, this is something you guys don't cover. Is this something you can do, or what would be your solution for it?
That's neat too, that you listen to folks. And I would imagine it's not just the big stars and stuff that you interact with. You listen to everybody and come up with reasonable solutions that help solve problems for people. So I've been really impressed with MagnaFlow. MagnaFlow has been around a long time. I think I remember it from back whenever I was doing my 327, my Nova days in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So I think you guys have been around a really long time, even longer than you've worked for them. All very impressive product. I really appreciate you spending your time here. And as I mentioned earlier, before we started, you know how the kids love social media. Where can they find you guys? And I forgot. I mean, I think everybody should know this, and this is the reason why I didn't mention it. The website is MagnaFlow.com. Why is it MagnaFlow? That almost sounds like a lava tube was involved.
It's funny, we've had somebody draw that out that way, but the same thing, magna just refers to an increase or a larger magnitude. So what we do is we increase airflow. That's the product line that we have. And the name was a derivative kind of concatenation of two different meanings, a little Latin mixed in. But something else to kind of also consider too, you probably think performance. We've also evolved a lot as a company in the sense that exhaust has changed a lot. We're an emissions company making catalytic converters. We're a performance company making performance exhaust, but the performance world is changing. Exhaust in vehicles and hybrids is a different thing, and we have diversified into some other things out there. So a small little tidbit, I know we're on the closing side, but this year is unique in the sense that one of the brands we acquired back in 22 was called Camberg. And they're a suspension company. So this is outside the world of exhaust, but I would enthrall your audience to say, hey, you know what, check it out. They're widely known as like a Baja kind of fast truck, dirt desert run kind of company, but we're introducing them to our Jeep world. So you're going to see some cool suspension products come out under the MagnaFlow umbrella under our Camberg brand. So we've got some new products we'll be releasing at Jeep Beach and a few of the Jeep events out there just past Moab.
Excellent. That is really good. And interesting that you guys are going that direction. And not to be negative, but I think with the electric vehicles eventually are going to be the thing. And then the ICE or internal combustion engines are going to be the things for weekends and the the hardcore off-road people. So I think it's good that you guys are diversifying a little bit. And I forgot to ask this. I only know MagnaFlow as an exhaust company. And now you've mentioned about the suspension. Do you guys do anything else besides currently except for exhaust?
I mean, another division of exhaust. It's a little less of the sexy, fun stuff, that is performance exhaust. We also own another brand called BRE. It's best replacement exhaust. And this is all the technology that we've put into building a high performance exhaust, packaging, ease of installation, complete all-in-one packaging. And this is for the guy that's not looking for, maybe you've got a restoration vehicle that you're not so worried about getting to a performance state, but you need to replace that exhaust that nobody makes anymore. We've got all the data for all of our performance components. So we're making an entry-level exhaust, and sometimes it's just a budget buy, because what I'll tell people, hey, you know what, if you really can't get into that, $1,500 exhaust system, our BRE system's like $600, go buy one of our $200 mufflers, swap the muffler, and that's going to be the closest you're going to get to a high performance exhaust, because it's still mandrel bent. The only thing you're not getting is the stainless, and of course the muffler is highly restrictive in the factory sense, and is not going to provide you tone unless you go through and buy one of our aftermarket parts. But that is another kind of approach to a budget build, or somebody that's simply trying to keep a car on the road that doesn't necessarily want the performance aspect and is not interested in making it louder.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, and we talked about this before, and I forgot we hadn't talked about it during the interview. All the catback systems are installable in your garage or driveway, no lift. So you can get this thing and install it yourself.
The big part is, one of our criteria, we want to make sure that the installation is easier than the deinstallation. So the factory exhaust systems, in a lot of cases, like your truck, if you don't have a means to droop that axle down, you're trying to pull out an 8-foot long pipe that's got twists and turns to kind of fish it out. Usually you have to use a Sawzall, cut it at the axle and pull it out as 2 pieces, whereas our system will come as multi-piece and will install with 0 jack stands on your back on a stock truck.
How do you hold the pieces together? Is it clamps, or do you have to weld?
So everything we have is bolt-on, no cut, no fab work required for any of the Gladiator products and the vast majority of our product lines. Everything we do in that case is bolt-on. So it's reversible. If you have any concerns about what's going to happen, it's a leased vehicle, you're not sure if you're going to have that leased vehicle and buy it out or potentially give it back, our system unbolts and bolts on with the same type of equipment. So even our clamps are OE style Torca clamps, and it's what you're used to using on a factory vehicle.
Interesting. That's great. All right. Well, that's what I expected, but I wanted to cover that for the end user going, I'm interested in this, but I don't know how to do no welding. I don't want to take this thing to a shop. There's a lot of people out there that are can-doers or do-doers. And I would think that this is a fairly easy install. It's just mating up tubes and bolting, clamping, tightening clamps, right?
If I remember enough of these installs correctly, I need less than 5 hand tools. And that even includes different sockets. It's going to be a 15 millimeter. It's going to be a 13 millimeter. You'll need some kind of a set of pliers to kind of pull through the mounts and the rubber and WD-40. And really a ratchet. I mean, that's it to get the system in and out. So basic hand tools.
Yeah. So guys, and this is one of those modifications you can make where people actually see, because you're going to get rid of that big ass resonator on the back of your Gladiator.
Yeah, like I said, Jeep didn't like it enough to try to paint it black to hide it.
Oh, well, this is wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you being here with us, and lots of information. And I say this quite often. It's certainly true for you as well. We have so much information here, and I know that we haven't scratched the surface of all the things that we could have asked. I've been adding questions at the end because I was like, oh, I didn't ask this. I didn't ask this.
Yeah.
So, Rich, we'll have to have you back sometime really, really soon. And we really appreciate you making time for us.
Glad to be here, and of course, always good to communicate. And that's our biggest thing: is if we can help somebody get through their exhaust experience, we've done our job.
Oh, you didn't mention your social media. Where are the social media things? Is it MagnaFlow everywhere? Instagram, so on and so forth.
We try to keep it very easy. You'll find everything that it has to do with exhaust at MagnaFlow, MagnaFlow.com. So all the typical social tags, hashtags. On the suspension side, it's going to be at Camberg. So very similar to, you'll find the social media there, Camberg Racing, and we have a race team there that you can follow. Camberg Engineering is on the developmental side. And then same thing with BRE. You'll find all the BRE product at MagnaFlow.com. So one way or the other, it's going to be, MagnaFlow, Camberg, pretty easy to find.
Very, very nice. Rich, thank you so much, and hope you have a great day and another 22 years, which you're probably going, no, I want to retire at some point.
Don't tell my boss, but, it's the thing I enjoy doing, so it's hard to call it work.
Yeah, that's the next review. It's like, well, we're not going to give you a raise because you enjoy it too much. All right, Rich, thanks a lot.
You got it.
You're my friend. You're my new friend.